scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on?
What's good? We're recording.
Which side
Guys,
are you
happy
on?
October 4th.
Side
That is
are
the
you
day
on?
that it is right now.
Absolutely. We would never record early and
Absolutely not.
pretend like we recorded this on October 4th.
No, or actually be on vacation instead.
Yeah, we're going to San Frizzlies.
San Fran Slizzlies.
San Fran Slizzlies. So we won't be available to record, so we're doing this one a little early.
Yeah, we're lying. It's actually September 27th. But, you know, hard work deserves hard play.
Yeah, I think that's what they say.
Is that the saying?
I'm pretty sure.
There's a song about it.
Obviously, we don't know who won the shout-out game from last week, so if you did do the shout-out game, we'll shout you out next week.
And we'll do a double shout-out for whatever the shout-out game is at the end of this episode as well.
Word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got all the bases covered there. Take it away, Phoebe.
All right. Well, as we discussed on our show, what was it, 2 weeks ago with Justin, October is going to be Cult Month, which I'm very excited about. I am very interested and passionate about cults because they're just fucking crazy and also evil. So, yeah, every episode for the month of October, we're just going to be going through different cults and why they suck, basically.
Why they're bad and why people get manipulated by them, too. And I think that that's an important part of it is usually it's lack of community that makes people fall into cults. And
vulnerabilities.
You can tie that into capitalism somehow, I'm sure.
Definitely. The cult of capitalism.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a big thing.
That's a
it's
thing,
an actual
honestly.
thing, for sure.
Like, if we had to really get into it, that is a thing. Well, should we just dive right in?
We should just dive right in.
Okay.
Nosedive.
Nosedive.
Right into it.
Dive in by Usher? Is that who sings that song?
Oof, I couldn't tell you. I don't
Well, anyway.
know. My early 2000s hip-hop knowledge isn't
Taylor, you gotta...
isn't the best.
There's some good
I was
Usher
really
songs.
I was really into metalcore in that era.
That's fair. That's fair. I did go to Ludacris was at one of the Twilight concert series here like years ago.
Oh, that's lit.
And that was like not the first time I got drunk, and I was allegedly underage. But yeah, and I was drunk at the Ludacris concert. It was very fun.
That's sick, honestly. Yeah. One time I stood outside of Pioneer Park, which is where the Twilight concerts used to be, and heard Death Cab for Cutie set.
Oh, that's nice.
I did not go in because I was also playing a show that night, but it was fun.
Yeah. Wu-Tang Clan came one time, and it was
insane.
Crazy.
It
was a crazy
unhinged,
night.
Actually.
Yeah, it was unhinged. It was very unhinged. People like literally like ran not the barricade, but like the fence that like goes around the park. People knocked it over. It was bananas.
It's crazy.
Wu-Tang Clan, Salt Lake City.
Ain't nothing to fuck with. That's
genuinely.
That's the truth.
Protect your neck. So, we are of course talking about cults this week, and there's a new cult in Utah, you guys, and this time it's sponsored by the mayor.
We love it when a mayor sponsors the cults.
Yeah, which I'll get into it, but I'm just like, there's no way she doesn't know. So the cult is the Other Side Academy, or TSOA, TOSA, whatever you want to call it. It seems like an amazing opportunity for those in Salt Lake City who are experiencing homelessness or struggling with drug addiction or facing incarceration. The Other Side Academy is a quote-unquote therapeutic community where members will, quote, learn accountability, integrity, selflessness, honor, and honesty of character, all while living in TOSA's facilities rent-free and having their food and clothing provided. And if you can believe it, this is all achieved without the aid of therapists, licensed substance abuse counselors, or any kind of security. How do they do it?
My guess would be manipulation.
Taylor, you're right on the money. So upon first research, TOSA sounds like an amazing solution to Salt Lake's burgeoning homeless population. And it may even appeal to people with a proclivity towards communism, with its communal work and living, the funding of housing, food, and clothing. However, TOSA has much more sinister intentions lurking underneath. So a look behind this curtain reveals that not only the disturbing inception of TOSA, but also the eerie structure of the program and how similar it sounds to notorious drug rehabilitation cult Synanon, which I intended on getting into more of Synanon and what they did and how they operated, but there was so much shit that I uncovered when I was researching the Other Side Academy that I really couldn't even get into the Synanon stuff as much as I wanted to.
All you need to know is that they were shut down because they tried to assassinate someone by mailing them a rattlesnake. They put a rattlesnake in the mail, I guess it was just in this guy's mailbox, and they were trying to assassinate someone that way.
That's an insane...
Who thought of that plan?
That reminds me of the exploding seashell shit that the FBI tried to do to it's my dude
Castro.
Yeah, Fidel Castro.
Yeah,
they literally sent him an exploding seashell.
God, I used to not really understand when people said the truth is crazier than fiction, but
right.
it's absolutely true.
Genuinely.
There's no way you can make this shit up.
Absolutely. You know who won't send you an exploding seashell? Just kidding, we're not taking an ad break right now.
You're just addicted to ad transitions, Phoebe. You have a problem.
I've got good ones on lock here. So, the Other Side Academy is founded by a Provo businessman, Reed Grifter, Joseph Grenny, who co-founded a program called Vital Smarts, which has since been renamed to Crucial Learning, which right out of the gate is just a classic cult move, which is whenever whatever they're doing receives criticism, they just change it to a different name.
Why do all cult names sound fake? They all sound like fake multi-level marketing schemes.
No, exactly. Well, and actually, and I will kind of talk about it a little bit in this story, but the amount of cults in Utah and just in general, but especially in Utah, is bananas.
Yeah.
I
mean, you'll probably get into this, but I mean, the whole... Winshine's trying to knock the bottle cap off. Anyway, the whole essential oils business is basically verging on a cult.
Yeah, doTERRA's a fucking cult.
It's huge. I mean, because there's legislation here that protects multi-level marketing, but it's huge here.
Yeah, and especially the self-help kind of cult shit in Utah is huge. So, this this company, I guess, called Crucial Learning, they are described as power to improve. That's their tagline. The website for Crucial Learning has the typical vague self-improvement cult language claiming you will learn life-changing skills and, quote, learn how to handle the most crucial challenges of life and work, those that involve human behavior. Which you can attend a Crucial Learning seminar next year, 2022. It'll be hosted at the Grand America, which is a very hoity-toity hotel here in Salt Lake. For the small fee of $949, a room stay of $300 per night, and you also have the option of booking additional courses anywhere from $500 to $700.
Wow, that's such a good deal.
Yeah.
Is the idea of this for people to go and pay all of these things for themselves, or is it also if you're trying to get maybe someone in the program? I don't know.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's definitely akin to that multi-level marketing shit where you are trying to get as many people involved as possible. Yeah. And this is you'll see this kind of stuff a lot. I think Taylor, you I don't know if you mentioned it on the podcast, but like your Lefty Agenda video that you made about that, like,
fucking that like scam dude, like who was fucking...
the like what do they call it, like pickup
like,
artist?
Pickup artist. His was called Endless Options or something like that.
Like, it's kind of similar to that kind of thing where, and again, this is something that's so common in Utah. It's these sort of self-help or like self-improvement seminar things, which 99% of is cult shit. It's not the same structure as a lot of cults where like there's a specific leader and you're kind of trapped in it and trapped in like one facility, but it's these things where you pay an exorbitant amount of money, you spend, you know, maybe 3 nights, you're spending hours in this seminar, it's dark, it's cold, you know, whatever, like all of this fucking cult shit.
Well, and that's like, I know with those things too, like pickup artists and especially like financial well-being ones, it's like the people that are doing them don't like they get rich, or, you know, in the financial business, or like in even with the pickup artists, it's like they're just selling these seminars, and that's how they like will scam people. They're not necessarily like this business insider that knows all this crazy stuff. It's like, no, they just got rich from doing these seminars, and then they're going to teach you how to do seminars to also get rich. It's not actually any real advice. Like,
yeah, that's exactly it. And like, if you go onto the website for Crucial Learning, it's all of this like, and this is exactly how the seminars go. It's just vague shit that's like, sounds like it like pumps you up, but it's none of it is actually real or like has any substance, you know.
It's like youth group shit, like Christian youth group shit.
Exactly.
Be on fire for Jesus.
Be on fire for...
What does that mean?
Yeah, right. So, okay, so one founder of Synanon, oh wait, I just got lost.
It's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry, right. Okay, so one founder of Synanon, I mean the Other Side Academy, is for sure a seminar cult leader. The other founder, Dave Durocher, has the heart-wrenching story of being a drug addict, having multiple arrests, and finally breaking free of this cycle when he attended a former Synanon member created quote-unquote rehabilitation program called the Delancey Foundation. He was so moved by his experience at Synanon, I mean Delancey Foundation, that he decided to go on to create his own slave labor money laundering service. I mean rehabilitation community.
Wow, you're making a lot of mistakes.
A lot of Freudian slips, if you will.
Whoops.
So I do believe that when Dave Durocher attended the Delancey Foundation, that he was actually under the impression that it was going to help him recover from his drug addiction, allow him to live a better life. But what I also believe is that while being in the Delancey Foundation programs, that he was able to learn from the structure of the Delancey Foundation and see the opportunities for control and capital gain, and he decided he wanted his own piece of that.
Yeah, sounds like that's probably what it was.
Yeah. Much like I believe that the founder of Delancey Foundation saw the structures of Synanon when he was a member, and he saw how he could be able to reap the same benefits the Synanon leaders were if he started his own rehabilitation cult.
He was like, damn, I want to be king of my own little cult community.
Exactly. Which happens a lot, like with members in cults, they'll either go on to create something similar, or they move up the chain of the command in the cult to become like somewhat of a leader.
Yeah.
Cough, bishops. So the structure of the Other Side Academy, and why is it really, really bad? So when you visit the website for the Other Side Academy, you'll see that the language they use to describe the students, as they call them, of the program is very derogatory and blameful, which is another very classic cult practice. They will, like, make you feel like the life that you're leading is shameful in some way. So under their How It Works tab, they describe TOSA as, quote, "The Other Side Academy is a 501c public nonprofit organization where criminals, homeless, and substance abusers can change their lives free of charge. Our comprehensive 2-year residential program offers vocational training, education, peer counseling, and mentoring, leadership training, and transitional services." They call themselves a classic therapeutic community that is, quote, "based on one of the most researched and effective models for helping those with long histories of addiction and criminal behavior of the past 70 years. aka Synanon.
Synanon.
Ugh.
Which, again, known cult.
Yeah,
Like,
100% identified as a cult.
yeah.
They say that, quote, participants in our program are called students, and they represent our society's most serious social problems. And yet, remarkably, as a group, they provide solutions to one another's challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, they're using language that describes the patrons of this academy as outcasts from society. You know, they're using this derogatory language saying that they represent the most serious social problems in society. And then they use the term remarkable to describe their ability to work out solutions that they face.
Yeah, it's weird, and it also is, like, very appealing to, because I've actually noticed this a lot, like, it's very appealing to people, like, even like us, who are kind of over conventional societal norms. So it's like, you know, like, you hear about all these cults that are like, yeah, we started this, like, community out in the middle of fucking nowhere or whatever.
Right.
And it's like on the surface, like, that kind of sounds tight, like, I want to go live in an anarchist community out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not going to go live in a community where one person has final say over everything.
Exactly.
So it's like, they use this language like, oh, it's, you know, they help each other because they're in a community, but it's like, and it's like, yeah, maybe to some extent, but it's still not good.
Right. Well, and especially with the Other Side Academy that in Salt Lake City has been proposed as this, like, solution to our homelessness issue. This language that they use, it really appeals to people who have been protesting about, like, the camp abatements that have been going on and just, like, the shit treatment that the homeless community gets in Salt Lake, because they're like, oh, it's this community where they work together and they learn how to participate in society and blah blah blah, and they don't have to pay for their rent and their food is provided and whatever. And it, like, I feel it can appeal to, like, communist people, but the whole thing that they're, like, specifically leaving out is the part where the people within this program have no fucking freedom.
Exactly. It's like, are you are you the one that has the final say over these people's lives once they enter it? Because, again, that's not what I would call communism or anarchism or even progressivism at all.
Right.
You know? That's just authoritarianism.
Right. Taylor, fucking exactly. So on this website, they really hammer in the fact that there's no doctors, no clinical therapists, and no counselors at the Other Side Academy, and that they are, quote, not a program based on counseling or therapy. Okay.
And also, quick note there, what kind of fucking, I guess, rehab program boasts about not having licensed therapists and counselors? Exactly. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, the people who are trained to help people who are going through issues? Like,
exactly.
The fuck do you mean?
Yeah, it's insane. And I just, like, I feel like to any person who's, like, aware, literally, like, first read through this, you're like, what the fuck? Like,
doesn't make sense.
Huh? So yeah, a few notes I had. One, all this anti-therapy stuff is starting to sound real Scientology-y.
Yeah.
And two, if there's no doctors on staff and these students are supposed to be in this program for 2 years or longer, and in the duration of this 2-year stay, they're supposed to work at these services owned by TOSA, which I'll get to in a minute, where all the revenue goes back to TOSA and not the quote-unquote student doing all that work, how in the fuck are they supposed to pay for their medical bills?
Yeah, exactly. And, yeah, that's weird. And also, like, if you don't have any doctors in this, like, community, I mean, yeah, I guess you can take them out of, and go to another doctor, but, like, that just seems, like, especially because, you know, again, the way it's proposed in Salt Lake is, like, people who are homeless, who have potential drug issues and things like that. Like, there's gonna be medical concerns that arise that need immediate attention.
Definitely. Yeah, and, like, and again, it's just this fucking anti-therapy shit sits really wrong with me, because these are people who, I mean, a big portion of the homeless population has, like, mental health issues that need to be addressed by, I don't know, a fucking licensed therapist?
A psychiatrist? Yeah, like,
perhaps.
Pardon? Oof.
Yeah. So, students at TOSA are required to stay in the program and on TOSA facilities for 2 years minimum. And becoming a student at the Other Side Academy is technically voluntary. However, listen to this shit. Quote, all students apply voluntarily, although many attend as an alternative to incarceration. These pled guilty to outstanding charges before being offered a place to the other side and are required to serve their full sentence if they elect to leave. Okay. So the options are either go to prison, which, as we've discussed heavily in this podcast, is a pretty shit option, especially when you compare it to how TOSA paints themselves to those in need. And also just a subtle reminder that you can get arrested for being homeless.
Yeah, like loitering and shit.
Mm-hmm. And they claim that the program is voluntary. However, if you decide to leave for whatever reason, you will be immediately put back into prison to serve your full sentence. Sounds pretty culty to me.
Yeah, it sounds like you can't leave.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Sounds like you're pretty threatened into not leaving.
Yeah, it's just, and especially because it's like, oh, you can just go to this one place too. It's like, if it was like instead of your prison sentence, you can go to a rehab facility and do a program.
Right.
Take your pick. Like, yeah, that would, and if you don't like this one, you can go to another one.
Right.
But no, it's like you have to go to this one or you're gonna be in prison. Like,
right.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. Or if you could do like what do they call it? Is it outpatient? Where it's like you go and you attend this thing like daily or weekly or whatever, but then you still live your fucking life aside from this, but you just go get your help like once a week or whatever it is to attend these programs. Like, yeah, like people should be able to have a life outside of this, but you literally are living within this facility for 2 full years. So on the website, another quote from the website says, quote, the Other Side Academy is free to everyone who is accepted into the program. We do not receive government money and we are self-sufficient, with revenues from our training schools covering most of our program expenses. All right. So these training programs that they state here are companies that they own, 2 of which are called the Other Side Movers and then the Other Side Thrift Boutique, which is fucking gross. Where the TOSA cult members are required to perform free labor in order to earn money for the cult.
Yeah.
How innovative.
They're like, you can work for free. Oh,
yeah.
That's not slavery.
Yeah, it's like, that's how, like, the members of this cult earn, like, not only their like, keep in this program, but it's also how the company or how fucking the Other Side Academy like affords to
money,
house and feed these people for quote unquote free. Yeah, it's just fucking slave labor.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but
nah.
I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm real tired. Well, while we're to regain some of our strength, why don't we take an ad break?
Let's do it. Products, services. We're back.
We've returned. Taylor and I were just talking about, so we're driving to our vacation, and Taylor and I were talking about how we're pretty sure it's gonna just be me and him up in the wee hours of the night while we're driving, like going full red string on like crazy shit that's going on.
Fucking Ronald Reagan was associated with this group, and yeah, honestly,
Ronald Reagan was part of Synanon. Or, oh my god, the other day in our group chat, it was literally, no one else was responding. It was just me and Taylor sending voice messages back and forth about, like, the different, like, TV show universes that collide.
Yeah, just, it really shouldn't have been in the group chat, but everybody else seemed to enjoy it, so.
I feel like I forget, like, how crazy we are compared to like everyone else, and then we just like get going on these things, and it's like Scooby-Doo is in the X-Files and this, and everyone else is like, oh my god, like, you guys,
whoa,
are you guys okay?
Yeah, no, we definitely really embrace the red string, Charlie Day in the fucking Always Sunny mailroom episode where he's like, goes all the way to the top.
That is very much us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. All right, so Other Side Academy. I'm gonna hiccup again. I didn't. It was silent that time. Silent hiccup. Okay, so on their website, another quote from it is, quote, "All that is required of our participants is a strong desire to change and a willingness to do whatever is asked of them to bring about that change." We're just going to pause there for a minute.
Quick pause.
Willingness to do whatever is asked of them to bring about that change. Just want to drive that point home.
Yeah, very manipulative wording there, because it's like makes you think like, oh, that you just have to wanna change and you'll be good, but it's like, no, you have to do whatever they tell you
Exactly. Continuing with this quote, "Everyone works together and learns by doing. It's a physically and mentally demanding environment. During their stay, students receive an education, acquire marketable vocational and social skills, and earn the self-respect necessary to let go of their past. For most, this is the most difficult thing they have ever done." Which I will talk a little bit more about the, like, letting go of the past thing. It's fucking creepy, and again, very classic cult tactic. Under the Why It Works tab on the Other Side Academy website, they claim that, and there's a lot of quotes this episode, so sorry. Quote, "By a process of each one helping the other with no professionals, we solve problems such as generations of poverty, illiteracy, habitual criminal behavior, lack of job skills, gang affiliation, hardcore substance abuse, homelessness, perpetration of, and victimization from abuse." Okay.
Wow. So you're gonna solve capitalism? That's what you're
Yeah.
saying, like, because like generations of poverty. It's like, what? Like,
Yeah, like that is just a big promise.
that's a bold statement.
Especially without the use of professional help, and with the implementation of dangerous tactics commonly used by cults like Synanon and other destructive cults have used disguised as rehabilitation. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, you're gonna solve with this, like, weird communal accountability, which, again, could be a great thing, but not in this case. You're gonna solve generations of poverty? Bitch, what?
Yeah.
You're gonna solve being a victim of abuse with no therapy?
Yeah, it's just, and see, it's so frustrating because I hate this language because, like, again, the idea of, like, community accountability is sick. Like, I love that idea, and that's really, like, part of the basis of, like, anarcho-communism.
Totally.
But it's not really it's not really even the community that's keeping you accountable. It's this fucking organization that's telling you what to do. So it's like, really kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah, and it's like the accountability is outlined by whatever this organization decides is the way accountability should work.
Yeah, it's like the other people that are there with you don't decide what they want their community to be like. No, it's already decided for them. Like,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's discuss some of the methods used by the Other Side Academy and why they're damaging to the members of this cult, and the ways in which they're similar to tactics used by Synanon and other cults. So one of the first things that TOSA does that is dangerous, and it's a very common tactic used by a lot of cults, is the picture they paint themselves to the public. With rehabilitation cults, there is, of course, the aspect of self-improvement, the highlighting of a better life after using their programs, inability to work harder, to be better and a more productive member of society, you know, overcoming your drug addictions, overcoming, like, whatever it is that's causing homelessness in your life, etc. And when you mix, especially the drug rehabilitation part, with this cult recipe, it becomes even more dangerous, not only because they're preying upon this person's vulnerability, but also they're messing with somebody's neurological health in a very dangerous way. Again, something that you really should not be doing without help of a professional, like, therapist or psychiatrist or drug counselor.
People who have gone to school for this specific thing.
Who have trained to do this specifically. And when a cult uses the cover of a drug rehabilitation, they're able to appear to the public as a reliable resource to send struggling family members to, and they're often able to glean more money off of people due to this sensitive nature of drug addiction. Of course, this is, like, a very sensitive subject to people, and something that, like, when you care about your family member, you want to help them recover, and so you're, of course, going to send them to wherever's going to be able to help them and
pay whatever cost.
Yeah. So another very dangerous method that the Other Side Academy uses is the way that they portray their quote-unquote training schools, which, as I've discussed, is just labor camps for the individuals trapped within TOSA. When you go to their website for the Thrift Boutique, which that name is just so insane, or the other one they have, which is the Other Side Movers, the language is very complimentary to you as the customer of the service. It appears that if you were someone who was going to hire these Other Side Movers to help you, you would be aiding in the recovery of a suffering person, whether that's drug addiction or homelessness or what have you. And this helps not only fund their cult enterprise, but prey upon the heartstrings of people who feel a need to help those in their community. Like, we've been saying this whole time, people in, like, the more leftist type of community, it's like, oh, wow, this, I feel a proclivity to support companies that employ formerly incarcerated people and things like that. And so you're like, oh, wow, this is giving jobs to people who have drug addictions or would otherwise be incarcerated. And so it's like, it makes you feel like you're doing this service to somebody. It's just so fucking gross. And you just have no idea what's like underneath it all. There's other rules that are fairly common in other real rehab programs, such as like the removal or limitation of cell phone use, which is something like in Uni, which is a program here in Salt Lake City that's like a mental health program. It's
makes sense to a degree.
Totally. Yeah. You're not supposed to have any sexual contact with other members and no sexual misconduct, which sounds all well and great, but I would love to know how sexual assaults are being avoided or treated if they do happen, because you have no like professional licensed people working here, and like the people running the thing are
and I mean that's the thing is like what I'll get into later, but all of these like rehabilitation programs have rampant misconduct from the actual employees, rampant sexual abuse, rampant physical abuse. Like it's awful. Yeah.
One of the more concerning tactics that is possibly the most common amongst cults is the isolation from family and loved ones. This I was reading about, and literally I was like shaking and vomiting. So Jesus. At the Other Side Academy, for your first month in the program, you're not allowed any contact with outside people or family members. Once your first month has been completed, you're allowed to write and receive letters from one family member that's been approved by the Other Side Academy. All of these letters, both ingoing and outgoing, will be read and monitored by a staff member.
Yeah.
Super insane violation of privacy there.
Yeah, and it's just, oof. I mean, because going back to, like, what we were talking about with, like, Uni, Uni isn't necessarily, like, a long-term...
Right, not at all.
So it's like, yeah, you'll be cut off, but you're not going to be there for 2 years minimum, Like, that's 2 years of not being able to have outside contact. Like, that's insane.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so once the members reached 3 months at the Other Side Academy, they're allowed to have one 15-minute phone call once a month, which is also monitored by the staff.
Classic.
Fucking... After a year in the program, members will be able to have up to 4 family members visit them on the premises for a short amount of time, and, of course, again, this visit is monitored. So, explain to me how this is, like, different from prison.
Yeah, honestly, I mean... Well, and the weird part is the monitoring, like...
Right.
Because... Oh, yeah, because, I mean, phone calls... Like, I don't see what, like, monitoring, like, what your business is monitoring a phone call.
Exactly.
Especially for someone who's going to be there for, again, a minimum of 2 years.
Exactly.
Like, what? Okay, you're worried that maybe they're, like, talking with a drug dealer. They're not going anywhere for 2 years.
Exactly.
What do you need to listen to that phone call for?
Right.
Like, that's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, which I will definitely, like, speak on this a little bit more, but it's, this cutting off of speaking with outside people and like people who really love and care about you is just this like extremely common tactic where if you're only having one phone call once a month, you're not going to be able to see like the mental deterioration that this person is going through.
Well, and especially if it's monitored, and
Yeah.
again, we kind of get into it in my story too.
Yeah, like
almost the same thing. But...
you're not going to be able to say like, hey, I'm really miserable and these people are treating me horrible.
Yeah.
Because you've got somebody looming over your shoulder being like, don't say anything bad. Ugh.
Ugh.
Yeah. So, right. So after a year, you can have up to 4 family members visit you. After completing a year and 3 months at the Other Side Academy, members might be able to see their children on something called Kids Day, which takes place the last Sunday of every month. After you're separated from your children for a year and 3 months.
I don't.
Insane.
I don't like this at all.
No.
I'm not having a good time.
So finally, after almost 2 years, when you've been 18 months in the program, members are allowed to communicate with their spouse or significant other.
Oh, so you get to see your kids before you can even contact your significant other or spouse?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah,
Like,
which, like, I don't know if the spouse is allowed to be in that, like, family visit after a year. I don't really know exactly, like, the outline of
yeah, I
everything,
would
but,
think so.
like...
Is this, like, more consistent?
I would assume, yeah. So as I was saying, like, this type of isolation and monitoring communication with outside forces is such a common and vile tactic used by cults. The cutting off from friends and family makes the member believe that the only community they have is with other members and staff of this, like, cult program. And it also does not allow a lot of room for family members to be able to check up on their loved ones who are a part of this cult. And so it makes it so that, like, their friends and family members aren't able to measure the damaging effects of their cult practices. Like, if you're only being able to speak with this person once a month or whatever, and again, in these phone calls or talks or visits are being monitored, you're only seeing the person being like, everything's great, like, you're not going to see how bad this is going. And then, of course, like, by being in there for a year and 3 months or however long, it's going to be too late, and this cult member has already been brainwashed by the cult into believing that they're basically nothing without this.
Yeah, and then especially if they've, like, moved up the ranks and they're no longer, like, the low man on the totem pole, as they say, you know, like, after that amount of time, I'm sure it's going to be, you're probably going to have a better time than you would have when you first started, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you have, like, more, like, responsibilities and more, like, what's the word I'm looking for? More, like, power, basically.
Freedom to,
like,
freedom,
One of the tactics that I find the most painful to read about is the implementation of something called attack therapy. This is a common method used across many cults and other, like, quote-unquote drug rehabilitation problems, which was, as I was researching this, I found out is used by another drug rehab that I see in Utah all the time, which is called Odyssey House. And as Taylor's going to get into, it's something that was used in the cult that he's going to talk about. It's used by Synanon. This attack therapy thing is, like, one of the number one fucking cult things. Attack therapy was one of the main components of Synanon, and they called it the game, which is just, like, so culty.
Yeah. We're gonna go play the game.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
Yeah. At the Other Side Academy, it's called Games, which is just, like, the most thinly veiled name change from Synanon.
Yeah. But we're gonna go play. Yeah. It's stupid.
They're like, this isn't
the same thing.
cult Synanon. It's Games. Yeah. So basically, the Games it's a twice weekly thing. People all get into this circle, and so, like, throughout the week, students at the Other Side Academy, they can, like, fill out a little slip of something that they see, like, other members doing that's either, like, breaking the rules or something that they think is, like, not cool or whatever. And then when it's time to play the game, one of the students will pull up another student, and they'll put that person in the middle of this circle, they'll pull out all of the slips that has been written about this person, and they'll basically just like emotionally berate this person. And they're actually even encouraged to use like really hurtful language. And oftentimes it's like, it's not even something like, oh, Jennifer smacked so-and-so in the face. Like, that's bad, obviously. It's not even shit like that. It's like, you are breaking down this person about like pieces of their character, saying that these things are wrong with them.
You're a liar. You steal things. You're a piece of shit for this reason and this reason. Like, it's, and I mean, just constant. Oh, yeah. Terrible stuff.
Yup. Which a quote from this article that I was reading says, quote, "Oftentimes you're not even aware that you're doing something wrong, but we are telling you," says Susan, fake name. "We'll say, 'Hey, Susie, that's not appropriate,' and the other people will start jumping on that indictment saying, 'Hey, come on, you're a leader in this house. You know better. Come on, get it together.'" And so, yeah, it's like everybody will just kind of dogpile onto this person.
And I feel like it's, they can phrase it like they're, being like harshly accountable or whatever. Like, you're a leader, you need to start acting like it. But I mean, from the previous examples of Synanon and what I'm going to talk about, which is related, it's never just like harsh accountability. It's personal character attacks, it's screaming, it's emotional abuse. Like,
exactly. Which I was reading on their website. I need to see if I quoted this. No, I didn't. Okay. But I was reading on, it was like some like paper written by somebody who had been through the Other Side Academy, and I don't know if they were like a high up person, but anyway, they were saying that, so there is, when you first like apply to be a part of the Other Side Academy, you have to go through this like interview process, and literally in the interview process they already start this attack therapy where it was saying that there was this person who came to interview to be a part of the Other Side Academy, and she was like, "I'm struggling with drug addiction, blah blah blah," and the interviewer said, "Do you love your family?" And the interviewee goes, "Of course I do." And the interviewer was like, "Well, no, you don't. Because if you loved your family, you wouldn't be doing the shit that you're doing. You wouldn't be acting the way that you are." And they said, "I would really hate to see what it looked like if you hated your family. I would hate to see what it looked like if how you treated your family if you hated them." And it's just like, again, this is why you should not be fucking doing this shit without the support of like licensed therapists, because that is not the fucking way to treat somebody with... it's a disease. It's an illness. Addiction is an illness. And again, like the homelessness thing, a big portion of the homeless community are people with mental health problems. And you shouldn't be fucking saying to those people, you don't love your family because you're mentally ill.
Yeah.
It's sickening.
Like, this is your fault and you're ruining everything.
Right.
It's just, it just isn't healthy. I mean,
At
I feel
all.
like we have research to back up that that's not how you are meant to treat someone with that kind of illness. Like, it's not helpful.
Yeah. And they kind of, they like justify this by saying that basically like in society and especially in like prison, they don't give you feedback on why you're in prison or feedback on like what you're doing wrong. And they say, she says, quote, "The last thing you ever do in jail is give feedback. But here, if I care about you, I will give you feedback."
Okay, so you're in a prison with feedback? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
like, it's like, this isn't feedback. This is mental deterioration to break somebody down to make them able to, like, easier to manipulate. It's fucking sick. And they say that it's like pulling you up to a higher moral standard, a standard that the community depends on for its own functioning. It's a radical change. Fuck you.
Yeah, oof.
Yeah.
That's all I can say is oof.
Yeah. So coming to one of my last little pieces here is what I sort of was getting at earlier, which is this, like, the Other Side Academy disconnecting you from your past. which, again, in certain therapy practices, this can be an okay thing. Not necessarily disconnecting you from your past, but freeing you from the shame that you have from your past. Mm-hmm. This is not how this works. The Other Side Academy aims to disconnect you from your individuality, which gives you this removal of a life without the cult. So they'll push students to avoid looking back at their past. Basically, they will say, like, you're not allowed to, they don't let you have this, like, individuality, like, they don't let you do your hair the way you want to, and things like that, and they say that when you're moving on and forgetting your past, you're basically, like, building a new image of yourself, and what have you. It says, your new image is going to be built from you going forward, not who you thought you were when you got here. Which, again, this is just such a fucking classic ass cult practice. It's removing who you were before you got there. This isn't something that happens in the Other Side Academy, but this is a very common cult practice where they give you like a new name being part of the cult. It's anything to separate you from who you were before you were a part of this.
Well, and honestly, like, kind of frankly, I guess, like, that's what, like, a lot of religions do to you as well. Like, you know, and again, you can make an argue that religions are all just kind of cults, but, like, but even, like, ones that I guess we would assume are, like, legitimate religions, like, there's this huge culture of, like, I'm not who I was, I've changed, I don't feel the shame of my past anymore, and,
right.
You know, and again, no shade on anybody who finds religion comforting, but, like, it is this idea of, like, you gotta die to your other previous thoughts and beliefs so that you can now follow this new set of beliefs.
Right, exactly. And like, going on to the part where they're talking about, like, healing victims of abuse, it's like this removal from that entire situation in a way that's, like, ignoring the fact that it ever even happened, and, like, I'm not that person, and blah, blah, blah. That is not fucking healing. Healing from those situations is owning the fact that it happened to you and being able to say, like, that wasn't because of me, that's because of whatever that person chose to do to me. Yeah. It's not like, pretend that never happened and you're a different person now. Anything that's removing you from who you are as a person is not... It's not
good.
Yeah. Ugh. So to finish up a little bit, like I said, I meant to get more into Synanon, but I'm 5 pages in and I was like, fuck, I can't go another 10 pages on this shit, getting into the Synanon shit. But as I said, Synanon did this exact same type of practice called the game. Same kind of thing. So basically, they would sit a member in a circle, in the middle of this circle, for Synanon, the member would talk about themselves, and then the other members of Synanon would criticize what they were saying, basically. And a lot like the Other Side Academy, these members were encouraged to be extremely critical of this person. They would use harsh language. They would use profanities. They would use insults at this person. And then once the game was over, it was like, they had to just act like everything was fine and be really civil to each other. But then once the game happened, you would just destroy that person, berate that person. And it got so bad with Synanon that actually the leader of Synanon turned it into, which I'm thinking about doing Synanon for my next episode of this cult thing. We'll see. That's kind of my plan. If something else feels more interesting to me, we'll see where I go with it. But anyway... But the leader of Synanon turned this game into a 72-hour version of this, where you would basically just be, like, locked into this room, enduring 72 hours of people breaking you down mentally, which, again, huge, common cult thing that happens all the time. And in Synanon, this actually led to people, like, aborting pregnancies, committing violent acts, undergoing vasectomies, like all kinds of crazy shit that because of the mental breakdown that this game was causing the leaders of Synanon were able to just convince people to basically do whatever they would tell them to. Much like the other side where they said, do whatever is asked of you to make yourself better or what have you. Okay, so that's the end of my rant there. Keep your eye on this shit, you guys, because this is really, really becoming... It's already being implemented in Utah, but they're kind of forming it into now this new thing that's... They're making it like a tiny home community for the homeless population here in Salt Lake. And they're trying to frame it as if it's different from the Other Side Academy. They're like, oh, the practices within this tiny home thing are different, blah, blah, blah. It's fucking not. Let's be real. So yeah, just keep your eye on this shit and watch out for your neighbors, especially those that are unhoused.
Yep, I agree. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Let's take a ad break.
Oh yeah. Let's do that.
You're good. Yeah, ads.
Ads.
All right, we're back. We're talking about Colts. There's the goat scream. I really like the wall of noise that it caused on the
good
on the recording track.
Colts bad.
Colts bad. Speaking of Colts and speaking of Synanon specifically, I'm talking about the Elan schools, which were also kind of a branch off of Synanon because Synanon just fucked over a lot of people.
A lot of people.
Well, and I think that one thing to keep in mind is like, you know, Synanon came around before there was really any kind of like drug rehabilitation available. Like there was AA, I believe, but you know, AA was pretty private and like you know, you could go to AA or you could not. Sometimes there was court mandated AA, but like, you know, it wasn't like a live-in drug rehabilitation, and that's what Synanon did, and you know, it was the first one to do that, so everybody was just taking their ideas. But so I'm talking about the Elan schools. It was started by a Dr. Gerald Davidson, an investor David Goldberg, and kind of the main leader, ex-heroin addict Joseph Ricci. I'm not sure.
Ricci?
Ricci. Elan School was started in the 1970s, so good era. Nothing bad.
Nothing bad happened in the 70s at all.
Absolutely not.
Not a rash of serial killers.
The school was known for using humiliation as therapy and did the game from Synanon, but called these ones General Assemblies and kind of put their own twist on it. It was... I don't know if I want to say worse because it's hard to compare horrible things. But,
sure.
Basically, it was the game, except instead of going in a circle and everybody getting their turn to be screamed at by other people, a General Assembly was where literally the entire school would come and take turns screaming at one person in particular. And that was the whole General Assembly. It was not a turn-based thing. And again... Another thing to keep in mind is that this is for teenagers. This is children. This is not adults. So, which adds an air of like, wow, this is even more fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, being a teenager is already fucking hard enough. God damn.
Well, and that's what, I mean, again, I think that, you know, moving into like the 1970s, it's like teenagers were rebelling more. It was obviously... I don't know how to say this gracefully, but, you know, there's definitely a reason why there's a stereotype of, like, older generations, like, being more violent with their children.
Sure.
And when culture started to say, like, hey, maybe it's not cool to beat your kids, they needed somewhere to throw their teenagers because they were rebelling, you know?
Yup.
The school is reported to have had what they call a boxing ring, or they called it the ring. And basically they would, if some kid was acting up or just, you know, they wanted to fuck with this kid that day, they would put them in the ring. They gave them a face guard and boxing gloves, and they would have other kids fight them until they were knocked out.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And, they would label the kid in the ring as like a bully, air quotes, but it wasn't necessarily just because they were bullying. And a lot of times it was just anybody. They'd put kids in with other kids that were insanely bigger than them.
Right.
Girls also had to participate in the ring. So they just had to fight until they collapsed, basically.
That's abuse. Physical violence.
Actual physical abuse, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
The New York Education Department gave Elan a great review in 2005, but in 2007, education officials raised concerns that higher-up kids were causing other kids to be sleep-deprived and physically restrained for a variety of reasons. They would use these obviously as control tactics. Sleep deprivation is a big one, kind of like what you were talking about with the 72-hour game.
Yeah, big cult tactic is sleep deprivation.
Because you aren't able to make rational decisions.
Exactly.
Terrible stuff. Children, so the way they kind of organized it at the Elan school is there was strengths and non-strengths. So if you had kind of moved up through the ranks, you were considered a strength if you got to a high enough rank. If you were lower on there, you'd be called a non-strength. The strengths were kind of like pressured to keep other kids in line, and usually when you first got to Synanon, you would be paired with, or not Synanon, when you got to the Elan school. It's been a long day, y'all. When you got to the Elan school, you would be paired with a strength to like guide you, like a mentor type figure, but obviously didn't always work out. So they would basically force you to comply, or you would have a terrible time. Like you would be consistently punished. We'll get into some of the rules here in a second because it's insane. But kids were only allowed to talk to family under supervision of a higher ranked student. So you can never talk about the horrors that were happening. So exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah.
If you were
monitored
on the phone.
Visits.
Yeah. And that's the thing is these kids were told to be looking out for other kids that were misbehaving. So is this like culture of untrust that they bred?
Totally.
So, you were being monitored by your peers, but your peers were waiting for any chance to catch you on something, right?
Right. Well, and they're like motivated to, because then you could move up to be a strength.
Exactly. Good behavior, whatever. Kids were basically kidnapped in the middle of the night. This is awful. And again, I think this is what happened with Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
She didn't go to an Elan school, but similar kind of circumstance. You would just wake up and there'd be two guys that would take you.
Jesus Christ.
And probably, eventually would tell you where you were going, but not at first.
Yeah. And it's like, how are you supposed to interpret that? Especially, I feel like in the 70s where there was like this really big thing of like, there was like this fear culture and this push of like stranger danger and all of this shit. Like, what are you supposed to think is happening? My first thought, if I woke up in the middle of the night and some creepy dude was dragging me out of the bed, I would be like, oh my god, I'm getting fucking kidnapped and murdered.
To get killed. Yeah. And that's what like it said in, a lot of the material was like, is bad enough for boys that were kidnapped, but girls, it's like you were probably you were thinking you're probably gonna be sexually assaulted and murdered. Like, and that's so terrible. But yeah, and that's parents could have their kids picked up in the night so that they didn't have to deal with it.
Jesus Christ.
So
great parenting.
Good stuff there. But that's okay because in America, kids don't have rights.
Yeah.
It's this could be a whole podcast on its own, really, but there is this long history of like, especially people on the right pushing for complete and utter control over everything that happens to their kid, and it's terrible because it leads to situations like this where there's rampant child abuse, but kids literally don't have rights in our country. Like a parent, it's really difficult to get a kid taken away from their parents.
Yeah. small tangent, but when I was in maybe like the second grade, we did like, you know, those programs you used to do where you would like sing songs and whatever. One of them that we did, there was literally a song that was like, listen to your parents, listen and obey. Listen to your parents, you better do just what they say. Which, like,
it's just
what
weird.
the fuck?
It's, you know, and again, it's like, it's an innocent enough song, but like, you just don't know what a kid is going through.
Exactly. Like, you don't know what their parents are making you listen and obey to.
And yeah, exactly. And like, and I think that's a big thing is like, nobody fucking listens to kids. Like,
yes.
And it extends from like small children to like teenagers, you know, like this is a little bit of a tangent too, but I know like in the Satanic Panic, you know, they were interviewing these children, these small children about like, what happened to you? And usually the kids would at first be like, nothing happened to me. And then they'd be like, but did this happen to you?
Exactly.
And it's like, believe kids when they tell you nothing happened to them.
Yeah.
Like,
or believe them when something did happen.
Exactly. Like you, yeah, I guess that's part of like believing victims is believing either side of it. Like,
right.
I don't know. That's again, a whole other episode.
Truly.
But, so many teens would obviously try to evade, when they were getting picked up by these two men.
Yeah.
And they started kind of like what you were saying. They started immediately using that as a tactic to control them. They would basically say like, you can't escape. Attempts are futile. There's no getting out of here, and you're powerless. So it's kind of just this like, they just start from like the minute you're taken. Like, you can't do anything about it. That sucks. Which
is like a very like abusive relationship like type tactic too, where it's just like, you're powerless in this situation, you could never fight back against us.
Yeah, exactly. If you were so getting into some of the like wild rules that they had at Elan, because it's insane. If you were a non-strength student, you were not allowed to talk to a strength student. Strength students could talk to other strengths and could talk to non-strengths. But if you were a non-strength, you could not talk to a strength student, obviously, unless you were responding to them after they spoke to you.
Sure.
But if you knew someone was a strength, you were not allowed to speak to them.
Okay.
Which, again, in the video that I watched about it, which, great video on YouTube, it's by Nexpo. It's called The Cult of a Boarding School or something like that. Would suggest. But it compares it kind of to like the, the Stanford prison experiment. Yeah, where it's like you're giving people like absolute power over other people, and they're gonna abuse it. They're gonna abuse this power. Like,
exactly.
That's how people work when you give them power.
Right. Exactly. And especially when you're like conditioning that kind of environment.
Exactly. Students were forced to write what was called a guilt letter.
Oh God.
Pretty fucked up. This letter was twofold. To praise Elan on how great their place was. So obviously all the letters were read beforehand and were scrutinized.
Yeah.
And also to get parents to spend more money and keep their kids there longer, because they're like, wow, my kid is doing so good at this school. I want to give them more money and keep them there longer. We're going to go over a list that I have here of all of the rules at Elan. And this... You're gonna lose your mind.
Awesome, can't wait.
I'm ready for it. Okay.
Sometimes I wish that this was like a video thing, or there was some way that like my facial expressions could be recorded, because like half the time I'm just silent, but my face is like.
Yeah, you're like no. Well, so the first one right off the back here, having an image is against the rules.
Okay.
So, as we were saying before, like, they're very culty. They don't let you have, like, do self-expression at all.
Yeah, removal of individuality.
Yeah. And that one's, like, the biggest cult red flag. The rest of them are just insane. Reading as a non-strength is another one that's not allowed. So you can't read when you're not a strength.
Gilead.
And Which is funny because keep in mind, this is a school.
Yeah.
Like, they're supposed to be teaching these kids.
Oh my god.
It's a school/rehabilitation program. Not completing learning experiences, which again I think is kind of funny because it's like you can't read. I'm assuming that it's like reading for pleasure is like you can't do as like a non-strength.
Sure.
Like I'm sure you can read your textbook or whatever.
Yeah.
Writing without permission.
Oh. Okay.
This one, I just want to see how you interpret it. Being sideways, not allowed.
What?
And sideways is in quotation marks, so I assume that they mean like not doing what's right or like following the rules, or I don't know. I don't know what it means, but
don't be sideways.
don't be sideways. Looking at security zones. So like for instance, there was a big shed that had all of the switchboards for the phones. So I can't look at the shed with the switchboards.
Like you're just not supposed to like direct your eyes in that.
Can't look at it.
What the fuck? That's not good.
So non-strength interacting, and I don't think I made this clear, but non-strengths also weren't supposed to interact with other non-strengths. So if you were not a strength, you can't initiate conversation.
I'm literally. Okay, so just you never communicate with your peers and don't have any social interactions with.
Until you're a strength.
Okay, that's
fun, right?
That's normal and good and healthy for children to go through.
Exactly.
It definitely will make you a healthy, normal, mentally sane person.
The next two are kind of going in tandem. Talking too loudly and also talking too softly. We're both against the rules, so you got to find that sweet middle voice level.
Oh, good.
Looking at the opposite gender. Also, being attracted to someone is against the rules.
Because you can control that.
Yeah, that's super easy to control. Any physical contact, just in general. No physical contact.
Okay.
This one's a really good one. Looking out windows.
Are you fucking shitting me?
I'm not kidding you.
What?
Unauthorized drawing. Kind of goes with like the same with the writing. Not listening to higher ranks, obviously.
Sure.
Pretending to sleep at night, which I think is funny because literally falling asleep is just pretending to be asleep until you're finally asleep.
No, that's so true.
So
that's what I do every night.
Yeah, like you just like lay there and you're like, all right, I'm just gonna like lay until I fall asleep, and you're just pretending to sleep.
Also, like, when you literally were kidnapped out of your bed at night, and this is something on the Paris Hilton like documentary that she talks about, she really struggles with insomnia because of this, because she was like basically kidnapped out of her bed at night. She really struggles with insomnia. And so like if you're supposed to be sleeping at night but you can't because you have trauma, the only thing you're gonna do is pretend.
Yeah, so you better get really good at pretending to be asleep.
Oh my god.
Thinking of running away, which again is a funny one because
can they read your thoughts?
Can they? I mean, oof. But that's the thing is so much of this is just like, you know what? I think you were thinking about running away.
Right. It's that whole thing of like blank check.
Exactly.
Idea.
Like, you know, like I'm gonna say everything's against the rules so that you can go through all of it. Phoebe is cracking open a cold one.
It's so loud. I was trying to be so sneaky. I was trying to pretend to not drink a beer.
It's okay. I think that we're allowed.
The strengths aren't
exactly. They're not making sure that we're not drinking.
Kidding,
but no, we're about halfway through the list, mind you. I'm sorry, but I had to go over all of it.
No, this is insane.
Being in the bathroom for too long. Again, honestly, I get the idea. Again, you can't really control how long you're in the bathroom sometimes, but I get like, okay, like if you have privacy, like maybe you don't want to like let them be in there for like an hour or 2 hours,
sure.
But whatever, you know.
Which, and this is, I feel like a tangent heavy episode, but like I used to work at this salon that was so fucking horrible. And our break room was so small, and like you basically never had any like privacy, and it sucked so bad. I literally would cry like every day. The only place I could go to cry, it sucked. The only place I could go to cry in this salon was in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Shout out to my coworker if you're listening. I love you, and you know what's up. But like, I probably was spending, according to a law school, too much time in the bathroom because I was fucking
sobbing.
crying, and that's probably what those kids were doing in there too.
Probably. Wearing dark clothing is another one. Again, not sure. I mean, they provide you with your clothes, so I'm not sure what that means.
They're like, this shade of clothing that we literally gave to you is too dark. Get in the boxing ring.
Yeah, exactly. This one I think is kind of rich here. Being manipulative.
Okay, Alon schools.
Okay, Alon school.
Little pot calling the kettle.
Absolutely. Being lazy while working. Again, sure, but like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
That's pretty vague.
And again, like forced labor.
Yeah, no, you're not choosing to work. Listening to music, which again, I kind of like almost apparent at this point that you wouldn't be allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
Talking too much. Showering for more than 3 minutes.
What?
So that kind of gives you an idea of how long you were meant to be doing things.
I shower way longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I love showering.
A good hot shower it is the best.
Okay.
Not talking enough, which kind of pairs with the talking too much.
So you got to make sure, not only does your voice have to be at the perfect mid-level, but you also have to make sure you're talking at a mid amount.
Exactly. Making facial reactions to orders. So I guess if you someone tells you what to do and you're like, oh, I don't know, would maybe be a thing.
This is so insane.
Negative body language. Again, no context on what that means.
Which it's like, this is something that you can't really control. Like, body language is literally a human thing that
just
is
happens.
not easy to control.
This one is interesting because it kind of goes back into talking about the game. Pretending not to have guilt. So if you think that you aren't a piece of shit, then that's against the rules. Oversleeping, undersleeping, smiling is against the rules. Yeah, again. And that's the thing is like, the rules are practically meaningless because they will either be enforced at random or not enforced at random.
Right.
So it really just comes down to, again, whenever whoever is in charge that day in your area feels like fucking with you. Like, that's all it is.
It's very, like, loose and vague, open to interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so going back, because, again, as you remember, one of the rules was pretending to sleep. Well, and I guess this kind of goes into all the rules. We'll get back to the pretending to sleep in just a minute. Expediters were required to fill up clipboards with names of people misbehaving, or they themselves would be punished. So that kind of goes back into like you have to throw someone under the bus or you will be thrown under the bus. You know?
Which like reminds me a lot of how like cops have like a monthly quota or whatever to fill, which it's like that just breeds
more crime.
and breeds like unfair arrests and shit.
Exactly, yeah.
Or in this case breeds like people just throwing people under the bus.
Exactly,
for nothing.
because they're like, I have to fill out something. Let me speculate. Were you thinking about running away? I'm gonna put that down. Like, you know.
God. Big brother ass shit.
Honestly, many staff members were I feel like this is obvious. Former students, because I mean, when you suffer something like this kind of abuse, like being fucking punched till you're unconscious in a ring,
my God,
you probably aren't gonna have, and especially you're not gonna have the life skills to like go and move on, right? Well,
and like we've been saying this whole episode, I mean, that's like a cult thing, which it's where like you just create a system that funnels people back into the same thing, much like the U.S. prison system.
which maybe is a cult in and of itself. Another fucked up thing that I think they did was they made kids carry around signs that were basically like guilt signs.
Oh, wow.
So think of like what they did in the game where they were like, you're this, you're this, you're this. They make you make a sign and like carry it around of like, I'm a liar, I did this thing, I did this. So you have like a guilt sign.
That is like... That's like so like old school, like dunce cap type shit.
They also did use dunce caps.
Shut the fuck up. I can't. This is like unreal. If anyone has watched Sex Education I don't want to spoil anything, but there's like a part in one of the seasons where there's something where they have to wear signs, and I'm just like, I wonder if they got inspiration from this law school.
Honestly, yeah, it's wild. And again, I mean, granted, this was happening in like the 70s into the 80s, so maybe dunce caps weren't as like weird back then. I don't know. I feel like if anybody was wearing like if any teacher made a kid wear a dunce cap now, people would be like, "The fuck is wrong with you?" Like,
that's like one of those things that you look at that it's like funny looking back on, but then you compare it with something like this, and it's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's kind of up there with like spanking kids in school. It's
yeah.
We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's not cool anymore.
Yeah. Elan, of course, called all of these things treatment. You know, their rehabilitation was all of the rules and the punishments. So as you can imagine, with all of this, child abuse was pretty rampant here. You know, sexual abuse, physical abuse, obviously, from not only other students, but staff members that were supposed to be the adults.
Right.
Also, as I'm sure you can imagine, there was not very much actual school that was happening.
Well, if you're not allowed to read.
So
or talk.
So, and again, that kind of leads back into what we were saying. Like, if you're a student here, you're not prepared at all to go have a job. Like, so you're probably going to end up working for Elan or doing something along those lines.
Right.
School would last from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. And schoolwork was graded by the student for self-assigned work. So they would read textbooks, usually about freshman level textbooks, assign themselves the work, and then grade it themselves.
Okay.
So not much learning going on.
No, I would say no.
No. This part, this gets back to the pretending to sleep. Designated night owl students were supposed to shine flashlights on students to make sure that they are asleep. Because it's against the rules to pretend to be asleep.
Wouldn't that wake you up?
It probably would. I don't know. Again, it's not, and that's, I mean, yeah, again, it goes back to like, it's not meant to make sense. It's meant to punish you and make you watch for other people. Like, it's insane. This part really makes me sad. It is reported that some of the people that entered the ring were, of course, as I was saying, like girls, and there is even reports of pregnant teenagers having to be in the boxing ring.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, it's so awful. Brain damage, PTSD, and even death were obviously results of this happening. And it's
just like, it's insane to me that this shit like still exists, you know?
Yeah, and
like,
and that's the thing is like what you were talking about, like it's the same, it's bred from the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Like you can track, I mean, because, and as I'm sure we'll detail throughout Cult Month, it's like there is these certain things that lay out like what defines a cult really, and you can track this shit. Anything you feel that may be a cult, you can like track it back to like this same kind of shit happened at Jim Jones, this same kind of shit happened in Heaven's Gate, like classic cults that people know for a fact and identify as like, oh, this was a cult. You can look at these same outlines and apply it to things like Elan School and be like, yeah, it's the same thing. It's just more palatable, maybe, because you're calling it like a school or whatever.
No, you're absolutely correct. And a lot of parents didn't know what was going on at the school because, you know, the website and there wasn't websites back then.
Yeah.
The pamphlets made it sound like this haven of rehabilitation.
Right. Well, and when the letters that the kids are writing to their parents are like encouraged to be so positive.
Exactly. There's a clip that I actually want to play on here. It's, again, from that Nexpo video. This is going into Joseph Ricci.
Okay.
Whatever the founder's name is.
Yeah.
He's talking about the school, and I'm just going to play that. Let's see if everybody can hear it.
Awesome.
The use of physical punishment. Joe, you make no bones about it. There is corporal punishment here at Elan. Tell us about it. What are the stages it comes in? Who's it administered by?
Well, it's administered by the kids, first of all. Corporal, it's a harsh term. Okay, what it is we have the ring, okay, which everybody misinterprets. It's not a boxing ring, it's a ring of human people. The bully is introduced as what he is. In this corner is the bully who's trying to turn this facility into a detention center, okay? And in this corner is the house champion who's going to show him why it can't be done. And that's exactly how it does. And we never allow the bully to win.
The girls get put in the ring, too.
Well, girls bully as well as boys do. I mean, you know, we're a...
So I just wanted to give a little shout out from the man himself, acknowledging that the ring exists, first off, in an interview, and also just being fine with it. Being fine that kids are kicking the shit out of each other.
Yeah. And the way that he's like, corporal punishment is a rough term to use. Fuck you. That's literally what you're doing, and you admitted to it.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, and there's at least a few stories of people actually getting killed in the Elan school.
That's fucking insane.
Yeah, but, you know, and I'm sure there's more, but those are just the ones that actually made it out into the public. I'm sure there were cover-ups, you know. It's rough.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, so another fun pop quiz. Do you want to take a guess at what year Elan was shut down?
Do I have multiple choice, or am I just...
This one I didn't do multiple choice.
Well, I feel like I remember you saying something about 2005. I'm going to say 2007.
That's a good guess, but it's 2011.
Are you fucking serious?
These schools lasted till 2011.
That's what, 10 years ago?
Yeah, 10 years ago.
I'm like, I don't know math. I am gay. I don't do math.
I'm gay. I don't do math. I just look sexy. But yeah, no, 2011, it's, you know, I mean, they'll probably say like, yeah, the tactics at the Elan schools were redeveloped over time, but it's like, again, these schools, because again, the attack therapy was always part of its like ethos, so like it's always going to be at least that kind of abusive. I'm sure there was still physical, the ring I'm sure was still going on, like it's true, but eventually it was closed down in 2011. The Ricci, I don't know what this fucking guy's name is.
Who cares?
He died in 2001, and his wife took over, and then eventually it did get closed down because people were finally like, hey, this is kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
And, you know, eventually people who had graduated from the Elan school came and were like, you know, would like connect with other people who had been there and were like, this was kind of fucked up, right? Like we were abused, right? Like
straight up.
You know, they started groups and petitions and things. So yeah, so that also came from Synanon, the same thing that's doing Phoebe's cult.
Yeah, and still like going strong to this day, creating more similar cults.
Yeah.
Which, to bring this all back to like the Utah thing and where we touched on like Paris Hilton earlier, which I would say you would say the Paris Hilton cult school thing she was a part of is like branched off of Elan.
I don't know exactly what the affiliates were, but if
Sure.
not directly from Elan, it definitely came from the Synanon like
Universe.
universe.
The
Synanon
Synanon cinematic universe.
Just like the troubled teen industry that like
Sure.
Synanon basically birthed. you know?
Yeah. But the school, heavy air quotes around school, that Paris Hilton was forced to like go to is in Provo, Utah.
Exactly.
And it's just like we were saying on the break, like Utah is such a fucking breeding ground for all of these kind of cults. Like there is so many different types of cults here in Utah that just like exist freely, like the MLM shit and this like kind of self-help therapeutic type cult and the troubled teen type of thing and obviously Mormonism. All this shit, like...
Well, and, not to psychoanalyze our state too much, but I think, like, a big part of it can be attributed to what we were talking about with Justin, the, like, perfect image that has to be had here, Because that's where you get, like, the self-help cults.
Totally.
And the weird essential oil, like... and like the beauty cults and the troubled teen cults. Like if your teenager is rebellious, you can't have that on the Christmas card. Like you gotta
Exactly.
So it I feel like it all breeds from this like fakeness that the
Totally.
I mean, at least in our state, a lot of the Mormon Church kind of like incentivizes.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Tying it all back. It's all full circle.
Bring it all back to episode 18, 19? I don't remember.
I think that was
19.
19 because
Yes.
this is 21.
That's right. It goes
On the 4th
right along.
of October.
It is the 4th of October, spooky season. We're for sure not lying about that.
No, it's 100% true. But yeah, so that was all I have on Elan. Any thoughts? Any
I mean,
concerns?
so many. So many. Yeah, fuck. That's it's just like of course it's fucked up that it was legal in the 70s, but the fact that it continued through all the way to 2011, which is very modern fucking times. Like modern enough where people were like spanking and beating your children is pretty wrong, y'all. Like, yeah, it's just, and again, it's just this idea where it paints this outside portrait that, like, it's gonna improve this person and, like, preys upon the vulnerability of not only the parent who, like, troubled teens is, like, a stupid word, but, like, that exists. Like, kids fucking struggle. And drugs are real. And, like...
Mental illness is real.
Mental illness is very real. And I think a lot of parents, because of, like, the culture that exists in America and all over the place, is not very well equipped to handle these kinds of things. And so, because of the way that, like, Elan Schools or the Other Side Academy, like, paints itself on the outside, it appears that it's, like, this thing where you're like, oh my God, I'm not equipped to deal with this. So let me send this person that's suffering to this place to help them. And then little do you know, it's destroying them mentally.
Yeah.
And stealing all your money.
Yeah, and I think one thing to kind of tie it back into a lot of other cults as well is like, it's pretty well known that cults prey on people who are vulnerable, you know, in most situations.
Yeah.
And obviously, people who are homeless or addicted to drugs or do suffer from mental illness are a very vulnerable population, and so are, again, quote unquote, troubled teens.
Right.
Like, and especially if, you know, you're in a situation in either of those groups that you don't have full autonomy over yourself. Like you're being admitted to these places, you're being forced to go to these places. Like there's, you know, not really much you can do.
Yeah. I mean, if you're being essentially kidnapped out of your bed in the middle of the night and you just wake up and you're being forced into a van and driven to this fucking school, it's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And your parents are just sitting there letting it happen.
Or relocated by the city to one of these fucking...
Yes, if you're homeless in the city of Salt Lake City, Utah, and being... Your alternative is, we're going to imprison you, you're going to have to stay in one of our shitty shelters, or we're going to continue abating your camps, so you're going to have to move every fucking night and whatever. We're going to criminalize homeless people, as Salt Lake City does and many other cities. Like, okay, so your choices are deal with that or come be a part of this tiny home community or school or whatever the fuck that is actually a cult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just, again, I mean, this doesn't need to be said, but cults are bad.
Cults are bad. And so much more common than people realize. Like, we've kind of been saying, again, it's just like, we live in Utah, so of course that's where a lot of, like, our knowledge of this shit comes from. Mm-hmm. Utah is such... There is so much... This is so heavy in this state. And my mom has been a person who has made me very aware of, like, cult behaviors and cult things. And just, please fucking look out for yourself. If you're in college and you're separated from your family, if you are a person who's vulnerable in any way, these people are going to prey upon you. And so just have a lot of self-awareness around this language. Anything that promises you that you're going to, like, transform your life and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah. And anything that's taking away any kind of freedoms from you, cutting you off from family and loved ones, you know, anything like that. Like, just be very aware and vet what you're being a part of, because...
Well, and I think one of the nice or interesting and beneficial things about our first episode here is that, like, neither of the cults that we did were religious cults. Mm-hmm. Like, these were both things that were completely, you know, a-religious.
Yeah.
And that still happened, you know, like, it's...
Exactly.
I feel like a lot of people think that, like, oh, a cult has to be, like, some weird guy who says that he's Jesus or whatever.
Exactly,
you know? It's like,
yeah.
It's not. It can be something like this.
It's not. And it can be something as innocent seeming as, like, a self-help seminar, where you may not realize until you're 5 seminars deep and $30,000 in fucking debt. Oof. And you are, like, fully convinced that your only way to, like, be successful in life is to continue attending these seminars. Like, I'm like, how much of my personal life do I want to share? Someone in my close family circle was involved in a cult for a long time, and it was one of these self-help cults. And, like, finally, you know, we were able to sort of help them realize what was going on. But it was one of those things where it's like, I'm an older person, I'm feeling like I'm not very successful in my life, and this thing is telling me I can learn how to be successful in my life and take control of my life and what have you. And then it's that money thing. You're so much money in debt and you're so brainwashed into this shit that it's like you just keep giving them money and you're convinced that this is the only way that you're going to be able to, like, accelerate in your life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think there's some kind of, like, psychological thing that they've named where it's like when you get deep enough into something, you don't want to admit that you were wrong, so you, like, keep going in on it, and it's like,
yes,
I mean, it's definitely hard, but if you're aware that, like, sometimes you fuck up, like, you probably, you know, you're gonna save yourself more issues in the future if you just cut your losses and you're like, damn, I fucked up.
Yeah, which I will fact check and make sure that I'm giving y'all the right resources here, but there's a website called Cult Watch. I don't know for sure if that's exactly the right one anymore, because Scientology actually took over the domain that was called Cult Watch at one point, and they were like, Scientology's not a cult, everything's fine. I'll find out the real website for y'all, but there is a website where you can go that does keep track of like organizations that are cult or use like a lot of cult practices, which basically just means you're a cult. Anyway, I'll fact check that. I'll find the right resource for you so you can look on that and just see what is up.
For sure. And on that note, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Join our cult.
Join the Remarks cult.
Exactly. We won't ask you to do anything crazy, but we will tell you that you are nice and beautiful.
Yes. And the only thing we require you to do is leave comments on our Instagram.
You just have to comment something on the Instagram.
No, JK, you don't have to do anything.
True. Yeah, you don't actually have to do anything. It's my shout out game thing.
Yeah, Taylor.
I want to do a fun one. Tell me what your favorite book is, because you know what? It's not against the rules to read here in the Remarks Cult. So tell me what your favorite book is.
We encourage pleasure reading here.
We encourage pleasure reading, and we encourage study reading. Read as much as you can.
Yeah, I would love to know everybody's favorite book.
And yeah, that's and then I guess the Twitter for our podcast is at Remarks Pod.
Yes, and our Instagram is at Remarks Podcast. Our TikTok is the same name, at Remarks Podcast. And Taylor,
I have a YouTube channel. It's called The Lefty Agenda.
The swagger on your face when you said that. I have a YouTube channel.
I have a little bit of a YouTube channel.
Little silly little thing called YouTube.
So watch a video or two.
I have drank 3 beers.
Yeah, we're a little, I mean...
It's also getting late.
Yeah, and I feel like you saw through our ruse. It is the same day as the last episode.
Day.
And we're tired.
Yeah, we've done 2 episodes here. And I need to shut up, but we have been talking about and thinking about how fun it would be to do like a drunk episode.
True.
Where we just get drunk and we're like, Ronald Reagan.
Just like a rant episode.
Yeah, we should.
I think it would be fun if we like had a like a goal to like hit the drunk episode.
Yeah, like drunk history type beat.
Yeah, I love that's
That
like,
show's so funny.
It's so good. Anyway,
we gotta wrap this up.
We gotta wrap it up, but anyway,
thanks for listening.
Love you. Bye.